Thanks, Shirin. Really nice to be here. I think I've told my story at least 3 or 4 times in Southampton, so some of you may have already heard it. I don't know. Obviously, Ruben, you're not bored of it, so you keep inviting me back. So let's kind of give a little bit of the early career. So as Ruben said, I did electronics at Southampton. And I then went into the mobile communication industry as an engineer. I worked for Professor Ray Steele, who was at that time running the communication department at Southampton University. He was a very prominent figure in the mobile industry, and I thought it would be a really good idea for my career to work for him, for such a famous guy. It turned out to be that was a great career choice. Worked at Multiple Access Communications, which actually today even exists in Southampton Business Park. And afterwards, I went to Vodafone Research and Development and worked on third generation mobile networks when 3G was still going through standardization. So it gives away my age a little bit. So yeah, whilst I was working on 3G, I actually saw an opportunity in the market. And really at that time, there was nothing in the way of software products that could help mobile operators manage and build their mobile networks for third generation mobile. And this sort of, obviously, having this idea and knowing how to solve that problem then gave me kind of the kernel of the idea for my business. And at the time, you know, my husband and I, you know, we had 2 small kids, we had a mortgage, and so I thought, well, you know, let me try and see if I can raise money on the side whilst I carry on working for Vodafone. Nah, nobody funds an idea. Got to be kidding. So gave up on that, and then really came down to the choice of, you know, should I or shouldn't I? Should I leave my job or shouldn't I leave my job? And you know, obviously it had a big financial implication for the family. You know, I had a very good job at Vodafone, very good career. I was a principal engineer. Both myself and my husband were sort of, you know, at the height of our technical career, going really, really well. And I would have literally halved the family income if I left my job. So my husband was dead against it. It was like, no, let's try and see if we can raise money, you know, whilst doing this on the side. And to be honest, I sort of thought, well, you know what, I just can't continue like this. And I wrote my resignation letter, walked into my boss's office and handed it in. And then I told my husband. So basically, the poor guy, he kind of picked himself from the floor, and he was fine with it after he sort of learned that, okay, this is now done. But it was, you know, I had to do it. I had to put in 100% of my time because, you know, if you're an entrepreneur out there trying to raise money, no one's going to invest in you if you're not 100% committed. And that's just the way it is. So anyway, so I came out and on my own, what I did right at the beginning, because I was a techie, right? I knew how to write software. I knew a lot about radio communication. What I didn't know anything about was business. So I managed to get a few really good people on my board. So former CTO of Vodafone UK, who had worked with prior to leaving my job, I asked him to become my chairman, and he accepted, and I worked with a guy called Professor Ian Gross, who was head of BT Research Labs, and he came on board as a board member, and his wife kindly accepted to do my accounts because I had absolutely no clue about how the hell do you file for VAT and stuff like that. So I got a really small team of, I would say, industry veterans and a couple of really, really helpful people just to help me with those few initial steps. In the early 2000s, which is when I started my business, really there wasn't anything like this. There were really not a lot of incubators or help around. Actually, things have come on tremendously. You know, there's so many accelerators, so many places that entrepreneurs can go and learn from mentors, from other people who've built businesses. But really early 2000, I didn't find anything that was helpful. There was Business Link, which frankly wasn't all that great. So I had to learn on my own, and learning from your mistakes obviously can be quite costly. So I guess at the beginning, I very much focused on the product, as you do, right? The first thing you do is, when you start your business. And then I was also trying to raise money. Now that I was out of Vodafone, people actually took me seriously. And things were going really well because I was developing the product, and I had like a couple of engineers I paid low wages to, just kind of keeping things going, got the product to a place where, essentially it was beginning to actually look like a real prototype. And I was getting attraction with a lot of operators at that time. And I got a term sheet from the Southeast Fund for $500,000. So everything was going so well. And I thought, I'm walking on water. I've got former Vodafone CTO to be my chairman. I've got the guy who ran all of BT R&D to be on my board as a non-exec and helping me also, as an executive. I've got I've got it sorted, and I've got a $500,000 term sheet. So I got cocky and started really pushing back on the terms and the valuation and et cetera, and in the end managed to completely piss off Southeast Fund, and they pulled the term sheet from me. And the problem with that was that I had already told my husband to resign because he was an engineer and I wanted him to bring him on board to the company. I was so sure that I was going to close this funding round. So he was actually working his notice when the term sheet was pulled. So there I was with a kind of a product there and an amazing board and no funding. And of course, the family income went from half to now into zero in a couple of months' time. So that was quite a hairy situation. Called an emergency board meeting. Basically, what saved me was, it always helps actually to have wealthy people on your board. Mike very kindly put some money in, and he'd done really well out of Vodafone. He was one of the founding members of Vodafone, so he had, I think he put something like £50,000, and then I got some money from family and friends, and Ian Groves also put some. Anyway, I think I got together something like 100K. So I didn't take any salary. Forget that. Paid my husband the bare minimum just to pay our mortgage, kind of our, basically food, and enough to buy clothes for the kids. And that was kind of the bare minimum that we could get away with. And that's the only salary we took. And the rest went into hiring a couple of more engineers. So that 100K could have lasted us basically 18 months, and we had to kind of make it work. So we said, okay, well, it is what it is, It's me, my husband, working on the product, and we had one other engineer, and so we just kept going. And the product got to a point that actually it became something that you could use and put in the hands of other engineers. And we got quite a lot of traction from Vodafone, from O2. Of course, because we didn't have a lot of finances, we couldn't go outside of the UK. We couldn't travel to other European countries. So the traction we were getting were UK operators. And because we were having such a great pipeline, or building such a great pipeline, and I was talking to venture capitalists sort of simultaneously, managed to convince one of them to actually put in £1.5 million. And this is 3 years after that disastrous term sheet that got pulled from me. So for 3 years, we sort of bootstrapped and so on. And then the VC in question said, yeah, I'm going to put £1.5 million into your company, which was fantastic, obviously. It meant that I could actually earn some money, finally, and we could have some decent income, and of course we could now begin to hire people. Things were going amazingly well. Again, I started feeling like I was walking on water. I had Vodafone Group. So this is like the entire Vodafone who was interested in my product. So it wasn't just UK, this was Netherlands, this was Italy, this was Germany. The entire group wanted my product and they were testing it. And I was getting great feedback from engineers. Being a techie, I completely focused on selling to the engineers and didn't do any other type of selling at all, which meant that I didn't really have all of the decision makers on board. So the decision makers, the guys who were actually with the money, didn't really go and talk to them or take them out to dinner and wine and dine. I just spent my time with the engineering lot, and they loved my product. And I thought, well, there you go. My product sells itself. Obviously, it's the best product. And in all the trials that we did against our German competitor, we would come on top. So from a technical perspective, we were smashing it. But my German competitor was a lot more savvy on sales and marketing. They made sure that they went and wined and dined the right people in Vodafone. So I lost a 12 million euro contract, which was an absolute disaster for the company. And this was literally about 2 months after the VCs had put in 1.5 million quid into my company. So you can imagine the board meeting. I remember when the news came that we lost this 12 million euro contract. I remember going into the house. I left work, I went in the house, had a good cry, and then I thought, okay, I've got a board meeting the next day, I better go and get my hair done. So I went to the hairdressers and I thought, well, if I'm going to deliver bad news, I better look sharp, right? So at least it might cushion the bad news a little bit. So the next day, anyway, I had to deliver this bad news that, yes, we've lost the 12 million euro contract. And but, I was upbeat. I would say, okay, let's look at the bright side of things, if there was any. I've got all of these other customers that want to buy my products. I've got O2, I've got 3UK, which was new at the time, and I had others in Europe because we just raised, that wasn't very good, sorry. Sorry, I'm just, So basically, I thought, okay, well, look, we've got plenty of stuff to go after, right? Okay, I know Vodafone was a big one, but there are lots and lots of countries out there, etc. But one thing in business that I learned is that once you lose momentum in a market, forget it. Like 70%, literally 70% of all the customers who were interested in my product disappeared because we lost Vodafone. So losing Vodafone didn't just mean I lost a big mother of contract. It also meant actually all of the other customers were now talking to my German competitor. And I had to, every meeting I went to with a new customer, I had to explain why I lost Vodafone. And honestly, this was just doing my head in. And in Europe, these guys were going around, they were cleaning up, etc. And I thought, okay, well, this is not good because, I kept losing contracts left, right, and center. I did win O2 UK, which was good, but, everything else I was losing. So after about spending like a year trying to compete with this German competitor and so on, I just thought, this is not working. And I switched my attention to US, where they weren't active. So best decision I made. Another lesson, go where your competitor isn't. So that was a good decision. It took me a year before I made that decision, but at least I made it. So I went to US and literally lived out there for about a year to try and get into what was a massive company, AT&T, as big as Vodafone. And really that frankly saved my company. So this is now, about 5 years after I first started the company. So after 5 years, literally, of hard work and fighting against a competitor, I literally just managed to be okay, but not be very, very good. I got the company's revenues to about 2 million, and that was back in 2008, about 5 years after I started. And frankly, I came to the conclusion that if I don't come up with another product, my company wasn't going to grow any further, because although we'd been successful in the US, the rest of the world was gone because my competitor literally cleaned up, not just in Europe but in Asia, and they were just, they were doing really, really well. And I thought, that's it, I've got it to 2 million, but it's going to basically start going down, and I've got to come up with a second product. Or fire sale the company and basically lose everything, all the work that I've done for 5-6 years. Thankfully, my investors still believed in me. I had credibility with them, so I went back to them and said, hey guys, the good news is we've won AT&T and we've now got the company to 2 million of revenue. The bad news is there isn't much else to go after with this product that I've got here. So either, you invest in me, and I've got this idea for this next product, which was part of the vision, but we were hoping that we would never actually have to build the vision, and we could just, sell the first product and exit, and everyone goes home happy. But now I've got to actually build this really hard product if I'm gonna make this company a successful company. So they said, okay, we'll give you some money, but you've got to go and raise from external VCs. Because we're not going to be the only ones who are going to put money into this. So anyway, so they gave me some money to extend the runway. I was successful in getting Qualcomm Venture and one other VC on board, raised about £5 million, and that gave me the funding to build the second product. And then came the dilemma, because the second product was very different to the first one. The first one was very much an engineering desktop type of a product that you would actually install it on your laptop or install it on your computer, and the engineer would work with it to design and optimize a 3G network. The new product, however, was probably one of the first big data applications, the biggest, I would say, platform that was built in big data before big data became a buzzword. And that's what I was trying to achieve. I was trying to get the data that's being transmitted by your mobile handsets, all of that collected in my application, and then be able to provide analytics to mobile operators. And that was the vision, right, at that time. And I didn't have the right engineers, because the engineers I'd hired were very good for desktop application. For example, my husband was the CTO at the time, brilliant guy at doing that kind of thing, but not for the new product. So I demoted my husband, asked him to step down as CTO, and I brought in a CTO that was basically suited to build my next application. I brought in a chief architect. I changed some of my technical team in order to be able to build the next product. And as you can imagine, that was pretty hard. I'm still married to him, by the way. So just, but I had to make some really tough decisions, and you will find this in your journeys. Like if you start a company, at the beginning, 2 or 3 friends get together. They all think they're amazing, and they're going to be together forever until they sell the company. And sometimes that happens, but sometimes actually you find that some people either are no longer suitable to continue the journey, or they have to fulfill a different role. And those are some tough decisions that as CEO I had to make in order to really take my company to the next level. So anyway, made those decisions, brought in the right CTO, the right technical team, started building the product. And this was the first of its kind, had been built before in the telco industry, the very first time that actually the data that was being collected from billions and billions of messages that we send continually from our mobile phones back and forth being collected and anonymously, obviously, collated together and then provided as analytics and as where the issues and problems were occurring for mobile operators. So we started basically developing it, and we brought this product into the market. And this is where kind of luck struck, right? So I had the product, and I was very lucky that when I launched my product, iPhone was also launched. And so iPhone was launched in 2008, the very first time actually that smartphones had come to the market, and for the very first time smartphones were being used by people to do the stuff that we take for granted today. And back then it was all new. And then in 2009, iPhone then went into 3G because they first started on, I don't know, Edge. I don't know why they did that, but anyway. So in 2009, AT&T, O2 UK, both of them were my customers, adopted the iPhone exclusively because it was such a great phone to use. I mean, it was the first smartphone that actually made the usage of data easy. And what happened was that people went crazy. They were using it like anything. Like, these devices were amazing and everyone was using it. And what happened next was that the AT&T network just kept crumbling down. It was brought down. O2 UK network was brought down. They didn't know how to manage the network with all of this data, all the smartphones. And guess what? My product was the only product that could tell them how to fix that problem. So a bit of luck as well. The vision was the right vision, but iPhone took quite a long time for it to come to the market and really get 3G going, and of course 4G came next. But it coincided with me bringing up my product. And literally what happened was that I followed iPhone launch around the world, and I went with my product and sold to the countries where iPhone was being launched. And of course, having learned the mistakes of kind of the first phase of my startup, I put a lot of focus on sales and marketing. I hired a complete kick-ass head of sales. I made sure that I hired some really amazing salespeople, amazing marketing people, and having learned my lesson of how to sell to multi-billion-dollar organizations, I made sure I didn't make those mistakes again. And in 2009, we were making $2 million in revenue, and then we grew the company from $2 million to $20 million by 2012. So literally within a matter of 3 years, we grew by 10x, and then 2x as well, 18 months after. So when I sold my company in 2013, because we were just being so successful that the industry took notice of it. We were just smashing it out of the park. All of the competitors were left behind. And we made sure they were left behind as well, because again, learning the lessons of launching my first product, there's no prize for second place. So you have to win the gold medal if you want to be in that competitive world. And we were number one, and I was determined that no one else was going to take that place. In terms of the exit, we could have gone for longer. So when our revenues were 20 million, we could have grown the company and got more money for it. But frankly, after 10 years of running it, I was tired. I wanted to see my kids. And I had a few of my managers and my people who worked with me for 8 years, 9 years. Some of them had been through the journey with me for a long time. They were tired. And so we decided to sell the business for $85 million. And it was an extremely successful outcome, not just for me, for the investors, for all the employees. And we had an amazing exit party, which I remember to this day. So that's my story. I'm glad, hope you enjoyed it. I'll take any questions. To be honest, I didn't have one. If I'm being totally honest about it, actually it was an advantage. Being a female in a man's world, it meant that people took notice, especially when they found out that I knew what I was talking about. Actually, it was an advantage. So, yeah. So obviously, when you're running a business, you're completely and utterly focused on running the business. You're executing, you're winning the customers. You want to, we were growing at a crazy rate. We were doubling our, revenues on year after we launched our second product, and. But I knew and I could feel that the company was being noticed by the bigger boys, and the bigger boys being IBM, the Oracles of the world, the Amdocs, and so multi-billion-dollar companies were like hovering around our stand at big shows, like you go to this electronic big show in Las Vegas, or we go to a similar one in Barcelona, Mobile World Congress. And when head of kind of IBM drops in and wants to have a chat and see how things are going, you kind of know that you are on the map, right? They're taking notice, they're seeing you're smashing it, you're growing like crazy, and that's when. So I knew that we were being noticed, and when I knew that, I actually embarked on, I would say, about 12 months worth of project to get the company ready for exit. I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't know it was going to happen in 12 months. I didn't know if it was going to happen in 18 months. It didn't, it didn't matter. But what I did know is that I had to be ready when it happened. And so basically what that meant was that I brought in people who had acquired other companies to come in and help us to know exactly what we needed to prepare. And this was run as a project across all of my team. Obviously, made sure that all the data and everything that we needed to do is in the data room, etc. But more importantly, I wanted my team to be ready because the technical team, the marketing, etc. So we had grilling sessions, practice sessions, shall we say. So I brought in people who'd bought companies before and had done due diligence on companies to come in and basically give us a grilling as if our companies were being bought. So really, preparation took 12 months. For 12 months, I was out of the business because I had a full-on team, and I made sure that every single function of the company had an amazing person leading it, which meant that I didn't have to do everything myself, so I could take myself out, meet with the acquirers, figure out what their strategic directions are, and so when I started getting these offers in, I knew what was our value to them and how we could position ourselves to them. I also got the help of a banker to essentially help finesse the auction process, because in the end we had 3 bidders for the company, and I managed to sell it for 85 million, no earnout, all cash. Which was yeah, exactly. So and that's really because you have a lot of people interested, a lot of companies interested. Yeah. So there was a whole program before the exit. So it's not like somebody turned up and said, I want to pay this much, and then yeah. For 2 weeks, I was dizzy with happiness, and then afterwards, I had seller's remorse, if I'm being honest. So for the first couple of weeks, it's all kind of new, and you've sold it, and it's like, oh my God, I made it. Not many entrepreneurs make it, and I actually made it. Everyone's really happy. You've had your exit party, and you're like, you're beaming, you're smiling from end to end of your mouth. But no, I mean, I would say 2 weeks in, and when you're actually part of the bigger organization, you start feeling remorse, especially when they start putting their tentacles around the company, and that's when it starts feeling strange, because it's no longer your company. You know, and I tried really hard to preserve the team and to make sure that you know, they didn't damage it. And to be fair to them, they also didn't want to damage it. So you know, they left us largely alone. But even with that, still the legals had to be integrated, the financial system and the financial team. There was still friction, I would say, as a result of it. But yeah, I did have seller's remorse. Obviously, family, I guess, family time, the time you spend with your with the kids, the time you spend with your friends, with family. I mean, the thing to note is when you start a startup, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to do a startup. In fact, one of my guys did. So one of the things I'm really proud of is after I sold my company, 3 of the people who directly reported to me, they went off and started their own companies, which I think was like amazing. And one of them came to me and said, hey, I want to start my company. What advice do you have for me? I said, the first thing I said to him, I said, have you spoken to your wife? Make sure she is not only 100% behind this, but 300% behind this, because fundamentally, if she's not behind it, don't do it unless you want to divorce her. And this is a good excuse to get there. But you know, you have to kind of get the buy-in of your partner, really critical, and actually your extended family and your friends, because like you won't see them. I mean, literally, I was on planes for about 70% of my time. I used to do long distance travel. I used to be away from home for weeks on end. And if I didn't have the support of my husband and my mom and, you know, my family, my brothers, everyone, really, they all understood. They all understood that, oh, yeah, sure, no, she's away. Okay, she'll be back in 2 weeks, you know. So that's the biggest sacrifice, I would say. The tips I have for finding the best talent: go after the people that you really want from an experience perspective. So don't be shy. You know, use LinkedIn to reach out to whoever. Right? It doesn't matter how out of reach you think they are for you in your startup. So that's the first thing I would say. Don't be shy, just go for it. And the second thing I would say is that I value attitude a lot more than experience, personally, when I hire for startups. Startups inherently are extremely hard. I mean, there is no easy startup. It's very, very hard journey, and you've got to have people who are resilient, who are passionate, who are just as committed as you are as a founder to the journey and to the vision, and they've got the right attitude. 9 to 5 isn't right for a startup. If somebody sort of joins you and that's kind of their mentality, don't do it. The third thing I would say is, if you need to hire a senior person, better to hire a senior person who's been in other startups before. Don't go and hire head of sales who is running a sales team in IBM to come and run your sales, because it will be really, really difficult for them to adjust. They've been part of a bigger organization. They probably had 3 PAs running around making their, you know, appointments on a daily basis and booking their flights. You know, when they come to your startup, they've got to do everything themselves, and they will just be like fish out of water. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but you have to be very, very careful if you hire somebody from a big company, who's been in a big company, and bring them into a really tiny company. Just be very careful. I have made it work. The CTO who came and replaced my husband, he was actually at Bell Labs, so always worked for Lucent, very big company, Dr. Michael Flanagan. But absolutely amazing. Like he was the kind of the right person for me, and I went after him. And you know what I said? Like, don't be shy. When I tried to hire him, there was no LinkedIn, but I knew he worked for Lucent, so I tried every combination under the sun for email to try and get to him. Like Mike.Flanagan, Michael.Flanagan, whatever combination you could think of, and I managed to get through to him with an email, with a really snappy email to say, I'm going to change the world. your research is so amazing and it fits right into the product that I want to build. Will you talk to me? And he gave me a ring. So I guess what I'm saying is that, it did work in his case. Actually, I'll just a little bit of a story there. When I interviewed him, obviously I was in selling mode, so I did my selling mode, and he was really, really excited about the company because it fitted really well with his research that he'd been doing in this massive company, which nobody really cared. And then I took him to the pub for lunch, and then I started putting him off joining the company. I told him exactly what it was like. I said, you do realize this is not Mother Lucent. You're joining a little dinky, like in a really, really stormy water here, right? You do understand this. I just want you to make sure that you actually spent an hour trying to completely put him off to try and join the company. And at the end of that hour, he still wanted to join. So I thought, okay, he's the right guy. Oh, okay. Well, losing a 12 million euro contract was a good, way to know what not to do. Yeah, I mean, I learned from mistakes, and it cost the company a lot. I would say that, especially for someone who's a techie like I was, get yourself a business mentor. Get yourself somebody who kind of knows your market, who's done the kind of the sales and the commercial side of things. Because if I had that, I would have been, I think, a lot better in realizing it. But to answer you a specific question, what do you need in order to sell to big organizations? Oh God, I mean, this is like an hour lecture on what you need, but maybe at a very high level, you need to hire people who've actually done it before, because they would know exactly how to sell to a big organization. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, actually everybody thinks, or I used to think as a techie, that actually sales is all about playing golf and taking people to dinner, and it really didn't matter and it was just bullshit. Actually, it's a real job, and they have real processes, and they do an amazing, and the ones who do an amazing job are worth their weight in gold. And I have come to respect that profession like anything as a technical person, which I didn't before. I really didn't respect salespeople before. But having done it myself, I know how hard it is. Well, first of all, if you want to go into a different country, you can't, especially US, you can't do it remotely. It just ain't gonna happen. So you've got to be on the ground. And what I did was, I went there, so I was there for 3 weeks, and then I came back for a week, so my family went out there for 3 weeks, and I did that for a year, basically. And also, the guy who worked for me in the UK, I asked him to move to US, so he permanently moved there. He didn't have wife or kids, so it was a young lad, so actually it was a good adventure for him. So I took what was the DNA and the culture of the company and then set it up in the US, because it was really important to me that the Arieso DNA continued. So I didn't just hire someone, but I wanted that culture transferred. So I had my guy who'd been working in the UK head up the US office. I was there, and then we gradually built that office and made very, very good progress in US. So the first advice is you can't do it remotely from the UK, especially if you're trying to sell into US. You've got to have a local office, and preferably an American-speaking sales guy. Brilliant. Yeah, with the right accent.
Thank you so much for your talk.
All right, no worries.